let's talk about Homeland by R.A. Salvatore. Technically, The Legend of Drizzt, Volume 1. It was the fourth book he wrote. He wrote the Icewind Dale trilogy first, then he went back to a kind of prequel of the origins of Drizzt. This is where I've started. I also do own the first book of the Icewind Dale trilogy. This is a 300-ish page, 330-page book in mass market about how, well, all it says in the back is, begins the tale of one of the fantasy's most intriguing characters join the Dark Elf in the even darker world below ground as he begins the search for his destiny. And there's, on the back cover, you can go and see a pretty picture, and in front of the mushrooms and fairy-fired buildings of Menzoberranzan, the great drow city in the Forgotten Realms. I basically thought this was quite fun. There's some things I could go through and some things I think about it, and I'll touch on some of them. But basically, Salvatore is not a particularly great writer. He's limited. It's an interesting comparison, my feelings about this, compared to just reading World of Tears by Philip Jose Farmer. He's probably a slightly more capable writer than Farmer, but not, as in there aren't just horrendous solecisms or active grammatical errors in sentence construction. But he's not always a great writer. Most of this is very pedestrian. Sometimes a little bit kind of wooden or dull or thonking. But it's pacey, it goes quickly, it's easy to read. There are moments of like actual expressions and passages which are quite well done. His combat is solid, if not amazing. And the stuff he's writing about is basically fairly competent. I think that may, if anything, sound damning, but hopefully you know I'm not trying to say that. What I'm saying is that he puts together enough decent stuff that the flaws are easy to overlook whilst enjoying this not amazing but perfectly fun book. The writing's a bit weird, and the other thing that I'd say is a big flaw is, let's call it, it's a whole network of things really that but they connect. So there's obviousness. Everything is pretty obvious. Everything is going in the direction you expect it to. It's very much telegraphed. Pardon me. It's very obvious. It's all very like, this is the story arc, and we will accomplish the points of the story arc. It's similarly related to that. It's schmaltzy. It's a little bit kind of over dramatic by instinct. People joke about Drizzt being the tortured Dark Elf, and that kind of can become a negative meme. I don't think it is negative necessarily, and I'll make a point of that in a second. But I think it's certainly something where you're constantly aware you're being caught in this very archetypal and overplayed, like massively over dramatic story. Why does it work apart from the paciness and solid combat? Well, he's quite good at realising Menzoberranzan. In itself, that's a criticism almost, because it's such a grim, horrible place. This drow where the soul grows up in. We also, and this isn't massive spoiler because it's fairly early on, there's another drow with a bit of, who's not a bad guy, who's Drizzt's dad, though he doesn't know that at the time, the weapons master of his house, Zachnafine, who has made compromises and accepted the life they live while trying to kind of keep a bit of himself apart. And there's a good relationship there. He's very good at a few of the relationships are very well done. Oh, sorry, here, if you want something which is obvious and over the top, his mum is called Matron Malice. Malice! She's so malicious. You get it? But yeah, there's some good relationships between, and some subtle relationships too. Zachnafine and Drizzt, and also Drizzt's sister Vienna. To some degree, there's a character called Alton as well, and Massage. There's a bit of subtlety about different characters you encounter, different characters who are important, which is surprising given it's not a subtle book. I thought that the basic tension, the basic plot, or main arc was also not that bad either. This is this sort of thing where Drizzt is, his conscience isn't crushed by the indoctrination of the cult of Lolth and the evil society he's in. It does affect him. It kind of traumatizes him perhaps, and he sees it affecting other people. But how does he cope with the fact that as he learns more and more about the society and realizes he lives he's the bad guy's hands. Are we the bad guys? He realizes that, and he has to kind of resolve that tension. And that is done, not just that's done competently, but also it's a genuinely okay and important plot. There's one thing about it being, we might think, oh, it's so cliched. He's this master fighter. He's amazing at everything. He's got a soul. He's the snowflake in the he's the unique snowflake in amongst the drow. One, it's more subtly done than that, slightly, but also it's okay. I don't know. Essentially, you watch sometimes old westerns and you think about the tropes in westerns, and you watch Stagecoach, and it's so good at doing the tropes it creates that you could some of them might say, oh, well, that's such a trope in westerns, but mostly when tropes are executed well, they work well. Also, this is just a sincere book, and I like it. I like the sincerity. I like the fact that, and this is very different to the kind of cynical, slight amorality of World of Tears, the comparison I was making earlier, is that they're both, that's a kind of good adventure book. This has tropes of the adventure book, albeit with a different spin. But here, this is sincere and well-meaning in a way that World of Tears sometimes didn't feel like. And so the fact that these things are cliche, perhaps now to us, doesn't land for me. They don't feel cliche. They feel fresh. And the actual story of this guy who's trying to deal with living in an evil society and trying to kind of, and also of his dad trying to also make that compromise and live and survive in the society, and these other characters who are more enmeshed in it, is actually quite powerful and real. So, yeah, I basically thought Homeland was quite fun. I wouldn't say it was amazing. I'd recommend it if you want a decent fantasy adventure read. I wouldn't at all claim it as a great novel. I will continue, not because they're great novels, but because I thought, well, that was quite fun. Might as well. The comparison I'd make is if you want, and this is damning with faint praise or giving great praise, depending on what you think. Certainly for me, it is actually giving great praise. This is very much a cut-rate David Gemmell for me. It doesn't quite have the depth of emotional seriousness and the stylistic focus that Gemmell has. Gemmell is a much better writer than Salvatore, but there is a comparison for solid heroic fantasy, which I think this can play in the same game. So anyway, tell me what you think of this. Recommend other Forgotten Realms and Drizzt novels in the comments, and I will see you next time.